Hello, welcome. This is Managing in the Moment, and I, as always, am your host, Betsaida LeBron. So I am the founder of Improv EQ, but I am also a team building strategist and management coach, and I'm really excited that you're here today. This show, as always, is for you if you are a people manager and you're looking for um, ways to be more effective with your team when it comes to how you lead people, how you relate to people. So I'm super excited for today's episode. As always, it is brought to you by Improv EQ. So if you're looking for team building, trust building, management coaching, all things that have to do with teams, please look for some more. Check us out. There's more information at improveq.org on the web. Today, I have a guest, as I usually do, that I interview. And as always, these interviews are pre recorded. And so I will play that in a second and I'll see you on the other side. But what I'm really excited about is that this guest is Gary Ware. Gary is going to share about himself, and he is we've known each other going back 7 years now, which is wonderful. Gary is incredible. His organization, his company, Breakthrough Play, really helps people understand how to use play in a really meaningful and strategic way, which I think is wonderful. And he's recently named one of the top influencers in the HR space. So really exciting to hear from him. And this is this year in 2021 by Engagely HR, which is a software platform that listed him. And you'll see when you see this conversation exactly why. So he's just a dynamic person, a good friend, and just we really vibe when we talk about play. So I'm not going to talk anymore. I'm going to let you see that, and I'll see you on the other side of this video. Gary, thank you so much for being on the show first.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited. Knowing that this was coming up, it was almost like Christmas. I'm not joking. I was super looking forward to this.
It's going to be so fun. Yeah, and it's something that I think managers especially don't get to talk about very often. It's not something that people figure out how to make part of, the day-to-day. But we're talking about play, which one of my favorite topics, and I know is so much of what you do. So first, actually, do you want to introduce yourself? I feel like people know me. I'm on the show all the time, but you're here and get them to help them to understand why play and why Gary. I know they're synonymous. They don't yet know it.
Yes. So if you haven't had the pleasure of connecting, my name is Gary Ware. I run a small company called Breakthrough Play, where it is my mission to use the power of play and applied improvisation as a tool to help individuals and teams just up-level everything in their life. And so if you're watching this and you're like, play, really? Think of it like this. Think of anything that you've played, regardless if it was a team sport or something that you did individually. I'm not a betting man, but I will bet that in that moment, you were completely immersed in the experience. Time probably went by like that, and it was something enjoyable. And that is, the essence of what I'm trying to unlock for teams and individuals, because when you unlock that on a metaphysical level, you have a release of dopamine, oxytocin, endorphins, all those neurochemicals that are going to help you be creative, connect with other people, feel like you belong. And that's essential for work. And however, how we see play is just something that kids do and a waste of time. And it is not.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you and I, we're in the same school of thought where we understand so deeply how play, all those C words that you're talking about, right? Creativity, communication, collaboration. It's so important and necessary, and it makes it so much. I mean, those things are all important and necessary, but play helps you get to it faster. That's what I love about it.
Exactly, and especially if you're trying to learn. It's the work that we do, because we are facilitators of information, and there is one way I can talk at you, and you can take copious amounts of notes, and maybe if we're lucky, you will retain a smidgen of that. However, we all know what happens. You go back to your desk, you put your notes on your desk, and then you go back to life, and you forget, you forget it happens. And then when the moment comes when you need to use these skills, you're not going to do it. The alternative is how we roll is that we have games, we play, and there is research to back this up that when you are in a play-like state, one, you're going to learn it faster than any other way, and two, you're going to retain it so that when you need to actually access that, when it's time to have a tough conversation, when it's time to have that, that talk with, that person on your team and be courageous, you're more likely to do it because you've already practiced it in the sandbox.
Yeah, it does. It gives you like that opportunity to go through things when the stakes are low and then implement those same things that you kind of have in your body when it's, real life stakes. Yeah, it's like every animal. We're humans, we're animals too. Like they all play. That's how you learn. And so this weird thing, you're right, happens when you're an adult and we're just like, nope, no more play, even though it never stops being valuable.
Great.
Yeah.
Yes, we're considered neotenous creatures. Dropping a little bit of science on you.
Ooh,
and neotenous
this is a new term for me, neotenous.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that means that we retain our juvenile features into adulthood. That's all that means. And that's why we play, because it is something that will continue to serve us, and we should embrace it. However, we've been led to believe that you have to separate the two, that there is a place for work and a place for play, and they should never intermingle. And the interesting thing is that came from way, if we can just sort of roll the clocks way back, a little thing called the Protestant work ethic, if you've heard of it. And that essentially is the belief that, one, back when that was like the thing, you worked pretty much every day of the week because we could not be trusted to do anything other than go to work or church. So if we had any leisure time, they believed that we would do things that were illegal. We would get into trouble.
Yeah.
And so that's why people essentially just worked all day. And fun fact, it was Henry Ford who challenged the 12-hour workday with his factories, mainly because people were getting hurt because they worked so much. They were getting burnt out. And so, get this, he said, hey, how about we work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, and we pay people the same amount of money. So essentially they got a raise because they worked less, they got paid the same amount. And so it was beneficial for him because people in his factories were not getting hurt. And then two, people were able to go places in the cars that they bought. Because get this, if you worked essentially 6 days a week, 12 hours a day, and then on the seventh day you went to church and you had a car, how are you going to use it? You're not going to use it. So
yeah, no free time.
That's where the 8-hour workday came from, and it stuck with us to this day. We still have it, and there's research to believe that 8 hours is too much now with technology and efficiencies that we have, that we should go in some cases to a 6-hour workday, or even some companies are doing 4-hour 4 days a week, et cetera. So essentially, my point is that we have this thing that was sort of installed in our brains as a society years ago, and we just thought like, oh, that's just how it is, and we don't question it. But the reality is, play is not just some waste of time. It's very important.
Right. You said a lot of things in that. So like, which is like, and I love that. I love learning something that I didn't know before. And the connection that stood out to me is flexibility is such an important piece of play, and that's what we lose. And when you're talking about kind of like the workday and what needs to happen, is just there's a lot of learning in that flexibility, even in like from the neuroscience aspect, that it wasn't that long ago that people thought like our brains were set, and then once we hit adulthood, that there was nothing else could change. But now we know that your brain can continue to adapt and to change, and to your very last day on this earth. So anyway, but just all of that connects just in such a beautiful way. And I'm like, yes, and play is the key. And I'm getting really hyped. Like right now.
Yay!
And so I kind of want to like have an opportunity to talk to managers. So if managers are watching this, like obviously there are facilitators and practitioners like you and I who can come in and absolutely just like run a full session or do things. But sometimes there's value even in like a day-to-day sense of play. And so do you have any thoughts or tips for managers who are thinking about that? And I mean, I feel like we made a really good case for why play is necessary, but then there's this bit of like, but like how?
Yes. So as to not overwhelm people, first things first, I like to say play is a sort of state of being. I'm not going to get too woo-woo on you, but it's not just an action, but it is sort of a mindset. It's a way of sort of stepping into the world. There is data that suggests that managers who bring a playful spirit to the workplace, one, are seen as more knowledgeable and, of higher status, because there's just something about a manager that can bring the lightheartedness when it's appropriate and in the appropriate manner that people are like, wow, I really respect that. So if you're on the fence, managers, just know that, hey, you're going to be seen as a smarter person when you bring the playfulness and the levity. Now the how. How do we do that? I call this like play plus, as in, there is a space for all types of play. I call it purposeful play to be specific, in that just think of a scenario. One of the biggest scenarios that people are facing with right now is burnout.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because, whether we're in a hybrid or virtual situation, we are working more than we have before, and we are burning ourselves out. And so that's just how we are. Like, you put us in the container. All right, cool. We'll keep working. And you need those breaks to rejuvenate. So if you want your teams to be able to go longer and harder and do it with gusto, how about you instill breaks where people can step away from their desk, and whether they engage in community or in their own, that is going to be crucial for them to like sort of getting back on track. And so, but this is the thing. This is why managers need to do this, because if you, so quick story, this is pre-pandemic. I had worked for this digital marketing agency where we had unlimited vacations. We were like hip, right? Hey, we have unlimited vacations. Just don't be an a-hole about it. Like, take care of your team and stuff like that. Don't abandon people. Great. Such a great selling point to join this team. But when I got there, no one took vacations. I mean, no one. There's unlimited vacations, but no one took it. Guess what? Because the managers didn't take vacations. Leadership didn't take vacations.
Yeah.
And that set the precedent that, if I take a vacation, I might be seen as someone that's slacking off, even though
yes,
it was advertised as unlimited vacations. And so if you want your team to really take advantage of play, you need to be someone that is walking the walk. And I've, with managers that I've worked with, I said start small. Set up your meetings where there's buffers. There's maybe a 5-minute buffer before and a 5-minute buffer afterwards, and encourage them to, after the meeting, hey, go stretch your legs. Go do something before you go jump into the work. Or before the meeting, I've had a manager and they said, look, the meeting's going to start at this time. It's 5 minutes after the hour. But guess what? For the first 5 minutes, I'm going to be online in the Zoom room or in Microsoft Teams, stuff like that, playing music, and we're just sort of bantering. So You just need to be there by 5 after the hour starts. But if you want to come early, we're going to be sort of chit-chatting, and we're going to be sort of getting warmed up. You're more than welcome to join us. But if you have something else where you need to, before this, where you need to take some time for yourself, go ahead and do that. And again, walking the walk. And that little playful thing goes a long way.
Yeah. The so true that managers set the tone, and I think that they don't recognize that sometimes. Because sometimes the best managers are so focused on their team, they're not looking at, well, what am I doing? Because telling someone, yeah, you can take vacation, or telling people, hey, you got to do what's right for you, but then you're not doing what's good for you. That's so true. And right now I'm like, there's, a new study that just came out about managers and how they're really facing the highest levels of burnout ever because of like managers are being expected to take care of so much more than they used to. And so I think that the sense of play is so helpful to that burnout, because it's like that stress cycle that needs to you need that break.
Yes.
It just keeps picking up stress and more steam. And visually, I'm imagining like a steam train, but it's just running on stress.
Right.
Yeah, like just more stress and more stress. And it's like even 5 minutes can be so impactful to reset. I love that as just like a start small
and then
idea.
Build on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It keeps coming back for me, this like the flexibility too, is like letting people if you have these 5 minutes and I'm going to play music, but that like not everyone has to be here, because as soon as you make it mandatory and you lose that flexibility, it's not play.
It's not.
Yeah.
Yes, we have to go into it willingly. And I know in some situations people are like, oh, but what about that forced sort of team building thing? I'm like, I know, right? It's something where it sometimes loses its spark, where like, oh, I have to force myself to have fun. No. And I like to invite people. Like I like to say, you're invited to come and enjoy this thing that's going to be, joyous. But if for whatever reason, if you don't feel comfortable, please take care of yourself. And it almost seems like it's one of those sort of reverse psychology things where I get a lot of participation because people know that they are willing, that there is permission for them to opt out.
Yes.
And when you get true play, a barometer of, by seeing a team play and truly play is a barometer that they feel safe. Because in order for us to play is a very vulnerable experience. When you, a mentor of mine, her name is Gwen Gorton, she said, play brings out our true nature. And sometimes people don't want to express that at work. And so
absolutely, yeah, that's because we're so I see that all the time. There's so many masks that you put on at work, right? I mean, the mask of like professionalism, ooh, that's a big one. And people can be really scared to be playful because they might think, oh no, they're not gonna take me as seriously if I'm a little silly or a little goofy, or admit in this moment that like I don't know that I'm not perfect.
Exactly. And that you bring up another good point. Play is inherently messy. And this is why it's so beautiful for innovation and for growth of teams, is that when you're playing a game and you make a mistake, like think of like any game that you're playing, when you make a mistake, you don't be like, I guess I'm done with this. Oh my God, I'm so stupid. Blah, blah. Like you're like, oh, all right, what did I do? How do I adjust? How do I get better?
Yeah. I mean, though I have to say there's always like that one person in the family with the Monopoly game that will flip the table, but they're not,
That's where we get on the edge, like of when it becomes like less about play and more about like extreme competition, like where the play sort of like fades away, where we're not really playing anymore, and you know who you are, that person, where it becomes that serious, where you're like, no, you're hoarding Boardwalk. I know you're doing like it just becomes too serious.
And it's so, because I'm like, who is this fun for now?
Exactly.
Because I'm not having fun, and I see in your eyes you're not really having fun. You're just trying to control and dominate. But
yes,
which is such an important piece for this, because I think sometimes people only know that competitive play.
Right. Exactly. Yes.
And it's the
And there's
only
so
kind
many
of play
different
that they
forms.
bring forward. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's why it's my hope in the work that we do is that we broaden people's horizons to play, to help them realize that, yes, the competitive nature, that's one aspect of play. And even within like the competitiveness, in the book Play by Dr. Stuart Brown, that is one of the play personalities, is competitiveness. But he says even then you still, like, there are the boundaries where you don't go to that uber competitiveness where it's no longer enjoyable anymore. Like, because if you think of, sports teams, they're competitive. And yes, you see all sides of things within that, and then again when it becomes non-play anymore, and then they're like resulting to cheating, as a to get that's not play. But again, in these, when you see it, like, they're just enjoying the sport, and then it's over, and you know what, we didn't win, all right, cool, but we get to play another day. Like, that is amazing. And again, imagine if we can take that spirit and bring it to the workplace, where we see our work as play. We see our work as solving problems in a new and novel way. And when we make a mistake, we see that as an opportunity to try something else out. Because again, that's how growth happens. You have to make a mistake to grow. However, I know firsthand. I've been in these situations too, where they're like, no. Like, we had a company that I work for. I'm not going to mention their name, but one of their values was Six Sigma, which is near perfection.
That's not a thing.
I know, right? And so, like, I get
the pressure though, but the pressure on that's. Yeah, I see that too. Like, with managers, where I've talked to, and they're like, no, but it's, I want to have people really reach towards excellence, because if that's the demands, my expectations is like excellence, then that motivates people to do their best. I'm like, no, there's research that shows that's the opposite, because you're telling people that what you expect is completely unattainable, and therefore they're never going to succeed. That's demotivating. It's the opposite of what you're trying to make happen.
Yes, it only works in situations where we don't need to be creative, because there's extrinsic and intrinsic motivators, and in a situation where we have a repetitive task, like we work on an assembly line or something like that, that is called emotional pressure. So I learned about this in the book Primed to Perform by Neil Dosey and Lindsay McGregor, and they talk about the intrinsic and extrinsic motivators, and how to use the intrinsic ones to be a high-performing team. So if you have a repetitive task and you want people to be good at that, the emotional pressure will get someone not to make a mistake. Because again, if you make a mistake and then the assembly line goes off, like, all right, cool. But if it's something, again, something where you eventually get to muscle memory, that's great. However, if you need someone to be creative, to be adaptive, to think on their feet, to be able, when there is adversity, to think of different ways of doing things, emotional pressure is not going to work.
Yeah.
Because it's going to get someone to be very predictable.
Yeah. Well, but even in like assembly line work now, people still have to be flexible and adaptable, and it's more than just what's literally happening in front of me. I also have to be aware of like things that are changing, and the awareness is completely different than I think, even a couple, decades ago, when things were a little more static, a little more rote. So it doesn't really fit.
Great point.
I can't really think of any place where it's like there's not value in being able to be flexible and aware. So
and so the extrinsic motivators are emotional pressure, and financial pressure. So again, I'm either going to take money away from you, or I'm going to give you money. Or inertia. Inertia is like, well, this is how we've done it before, and we're going to continue to do that. Those are extrinsic, because it's outside of the work, and those sort of pressures will get you to, comply. But you're not going to be creative. You're going to be very predictable. Now, if you need to be, if you need to be creative, if you need to be able to adapt, the intrinsic motivators are play, purpose and potential. If you can see the work as play, then you're going to be driven to like sort of excel at it. You're going to see those challenges as opportunity. Purpose is the outcome of the work. And potential is what you have the potential to gain as a result of the work. And if you can optimize for those three things, then you will get people that love what they do, regardless of the job, that will work even harder. And, again, they will self-regulate.
Yeah. And so I love those three. It kind of like makes it so clear. And as a manager, I think like we already talked about, it's like the first thing that they got to do is start for yourself. Like, how are you incorporating play into your day to day and living that, knowing, understanding your purpose and thinking about the potential, right?
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. You got to walk the walk. And I know it's challenging. It can be challenging, especially under pressure. But you got to think about that. And it sounds cliche, but it's true. This is not a sprint. It's a marathon. It's all about the long game. And these short-term, like sort of tweaks that you're making is going to have long-term consequences. I remember working with a group, and they were like, we need to make progress. We need, our team's burning out, X, Y, and Z. And it's one of those things where I said, look, to get someone to like immediately stop and say, all right, we're going to do all these things, it's going to be too much for them. We need to ease in. Let's start by alleviating a little bit of stress here. Let's do this. Let's try to help them develop habits that is going to be long term. And then they will be able to like look back and say, oh wow, like in a year, wow, we've made this sort of strides. And I know, especially with like a lot of the sort of way people are chanting about like, oh yeah, we're going to 10x this and we can amplify this in a short period. Like it's not doable. I'm just being honest. Well, actually, it is doable, but like it's not scalable. Like you're good.
Yeah, it's like I think about it like it's like a car, and you're like, we're going to put our foot full on the gas, and it's like, yeah, you can do that for a while. You can't do that forever. Like that just doesn't work.
Doesn't work.
And so yeah, the idea of play for me has always been kind of like it's that fuel. The car can't go forever. It needs to be able to stop and to refuel, and that's how I think of play a little bit for us. Agreed.
Yeah, and I learned about the 3 R's, and the 3M approach to rest, and it is micro, macro, and meso. And so micro breaks are those little in between breaks, like where like you're stepping away, you're doing something playful, something that brings you joy. Again, it's going to fuel you up so that you can work longer. The macro is actual sleep. Getting proper sleep is important because, again, so many things happen when you go to sleep. And there are studies to show that when you don't get enough rest, it will be as if you were drunk.
So I've been there. That's my husband will say, he's like, oh, we got sleepy. Sleepy Betsaida is just as dangerous as drunk Betsaida.
Yeah. Right. And so, and it's one of those things that because of the culture of, oh, I'll sleep when I'm dead, or, we have to work. It may seem as a negative or as a weakness to do this. However, you're going to be able to outlast everyone else. And then the third one, a meso break. Now, this one, I introduced this to people, and then this is where the retro scratch, and people are like, I can't do this, but it's important, so hear me out. A meso break is actually stepping away from the work for a longer period of time. Yeah. Some people say for a day, a day a month, and people are like, we can't do that. Oh my gosh, everything's gonna fall apart if we stepped away for a full day. And so I said, all right, is it possible to start with 2 hours? Have and do something that is restorative for you, but don't say, oh yeah, I'm gonna have 2 hours, and then what you do is you check email, or you're or you're doing
Yes.
like you're scrolling the internet or something. Like no, like step away and
Or
do
the people
something.
take breaks. They only see them taking breaks to run errands that they need to. And I'm like, you're still working.
You're
Like,
still
you're
working.
not working for the company, but you're working. Like, you need these things that are like those that are just for you. Yeah.
Just for you. And it seems like it is like a waste of time, but it's only a waste of time if your belief is that the amount of time that you put in on the clock is equivalent to your value. And we've all talked about how there is just about no job like out there in this day where we can't be creative. If you want to be creative and have sustained creativity, you need to do these things. That's how the creativity forms. Think about any idea that you've ever had. I don't think anyone's ever had a great idea trying to have a great idea.
Exactly.
It was usually somewhere else when you're like, oh yeah, I need to do this. So again, this is the formula to fostering that.
Yeah. We're at time, so I feel like, but we could keep talking. There's so much to go into.
We need to have a part 2 or something.
I think so, because then it gets into whole like why that's so hard, right? Like I think we talked about like why it's important and made that case, and then that's a whole different thing. But I think we gave people some very specific things that they can start thinking about incorporating play, just a little,
just a little bit,
a little stuff. Yeah. Thanks so much, Gary.
Oh, Betsaida, thank you for having me. Seriously, this was such a joy.
It was really fun, yeah. So I hope that you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. And there really were so many little nuggets in there. I mean, it was a jam-packed episode. So I want to wrap things up. But if you're interested in reaching out to learn more about Gary Ware and what he's doing with Breakthrough Play, check out breakthroughplay.com. And as always, you are curious about anything that we talked about today, you're really thinking about how you want to support your team, bring more play, or just get that communication, collaboration, and trust back on your team, or to continue to build what you have, reach out to me at improveq.org. You can reach me at Betsaida at improveq.org, or find me on LinkedIn. I'm always available to chat. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks, everyone.